Hi everyone, I'm Pastor Tony.
And I'm Heather, and welcome to BridgeChurch Online.
We're here in the lobby at BridgeChurch, and I just want to say we miss you. We wish that you were here, but we understand the importance of staying safe. So right now we're doing our countdown up to the gathering time. Grab some coffee, get situated, and get ready for a great experience.
One of my favorite things about BridgeChurch is that everywhere you go on campus, there's always coffee. I love coffee, and I love getting to see all of you. Maybe talking about our week and what's going on. In fact, Claire from our worship team has been helping with Samaritan's Purse, and we're going to hear about that right now.
It's a great story. Hey, how come I didn't get any coffee? Where's my coffee at?
Hey BridgeChurch, I'm Claire Zazzo here in Central Park in New York City. I work for an organization called Samaritan's Purse, and we're a Christian relief organization that has offices in 17 countries around the world, and now we're here serving the people of New York. Behind me is our emergency field hospital that we've set up here in Central Park to treat patients with COVID-19. If I could I'm reaching out to just ask you guys to pray for us. If you would pray for our medical staff here, pray for the people that we're serving, pray for the people of New York and the medical staff working at all the hospitals in the city. Pray that people would see the love of Christ in our actions and that God would open their hearts to the gospel. That's really why we're here. And so, and if I can encourage all of you at home, please be careful as you're going around in public. We still have a chance to slow the spread of COVID-19 on the West Coast, and each and every one of you is part of that. When you go out in public, wear a mask. If you feel sick, stay at home. And please reserve the N95 grade masks for medical staff as they're working in direct contact with patients. But go online and research how you can make a homemade mask for yourself. There's plenty of patterns online that you can look up. I want to thank you for your prayers.
Wow, it's so great to see people like Claire who are using their time and talent to serve people and meet their needs.
In fact, on our website, we have a place where you can list a need or meet a need to help people in our community.
But we kind of have a problem right now in that there's no needs to fill. You guys have done an incredible job meeting them. So do me a favor, if you guys have a neighbor or a friend or maybe a family member across town that has a need that needs met, go ahead and list it on our page so we can come together as a community and meet that need.
Well, we just finished Easter and it was incredible.
It was so good to come together and celebrate as a family in our own homes.
And you might not know this, but we were able to reach over 5,000 people with the good news, including 15 different states and 7 different countries, let's see, including India, Norway, and even the Congo, as well as the people down the street that you shared the video with. Thank you for spreading the good news.
Also, we have a ministry here on campus that I don't know if you know about called Celebrate Recovery. It's a place where people can find healing from hurts, habits, and hang-ups in the help of a loving and supportive community.
And since they can't meet right now physically, they've taken their community online, reaching over 2,000 people on Monday nights. That's exciting.
It just goes to show how God can use this crazy time we're having and turn it to good and reaching more people.
Well, it sounds like the band is warming up. That means it's time for worship. So why don't you get the family together right now and let's move from the lobby into the auditorium and worship together. And we'll see you guys in a little bit.
Bye.
Hey, good morning, BridgeChurch. Welcome. We're so glad you are here with us online this morning. Hey, I was reading in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9 this week, and I was reminded that it says, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, even what no human heart has conceived, God has prepared these amazing things for those who love Him. Friends, in the midst of this uncertain season, we need a promise like that. So this morning, I want to encourage you to lean in there in your home with us and declare and claim the promises of God. God of the promise, God of the future, you see beginning and end. God of the rescue, God of the breakthrough, how great is your faithfulness. You're not done yet. No eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no one could ever comprehend Your word will be enough. Your promise we will trust. Greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. God, in my seeking, God, in my dreaming, you put a song in my soul. God, in the working, God, I believe you do the impossible. You're not done yet. Here we go. No eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no one can ever comprehend. Your word will be enough. Your promise we will trust. Greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. Oh, you're not done yet. No, you're not done yet. You're up to something right now. You're doing a new thing right now. God, let your glory come down. Don't hold back, don't hold back. You're up to something right now. You're doing a new thing right now. God, let your glory come down. Don't hold back, don't hold back. You're moving mountains right now. You're breaking chains right now. God, let your glory come down. Don't hold back, no, don't hold back. No eye has ever seen, no ear has ever heard, no one could ever comprehend. Your word will be enough. Your promise we will trust. Greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. Oh, greater things are still ahead. You're not done yet. Amen, God, we say thank you. Thank you that in Jesus, every promise is yes. That the best is yet to come, that we can trust you even in this season of uncertainty. This morning, as we are gathered all across the valley in our homes, we declare that we trust you. We thank you for the new life we have in you, and we believe the best is yet to come. The passion of our Savior, the mercy of our God, the cross that leaves no question of the measure of his love. Our chains are gone, our debt is paid, the cross has overthrown the grave. For Jesus' blood that sets us free means death to death and life for me. The innocent judged guilty, while the guilty one walks free. Death would be his portion, and our portion liberty. Let's sing it out. Our chains are gone. Our chains are gone. Our debt is paid. The cross has overthrown the grave. For Jesus' blood that sets us free means death to death and life for me. I give my whole life to honor this love. By the Lamb who was slain, I'm forgiven. The sinner's Savior crowned him forever. For the Lamb who was slain, he is risen. I give my whole life to honor this love. By the Lamb who was slain, I'm forgiven. The sinner's Savior crown him forever. For the Lamb who was slain, he is risen. I give my whole life to honor this love. By the Lamb who was slain, I'm forgiven. The sinner's Savior crown him forever. For the Lamb who was slain, he is risen. Our chains are gone, our debt is paid. The cross has overthrown the grave. For Jesus' blood that sets us free means death to death and life for me. Means death to death and life for me.
Well, welcome back. Once again, we're so glad that you're here. Worship was incredible.
We're about to hear a great message from Pastor Andrew, but first we want to remind you about online giving.
Thank you again for your giving. It's helping us reach thousands of people, not only here in the Valley, but around the world, sharing the message of hope during these difficult times.
You can give online at BridgeChurchFresno.com or by texting BridgeChurch Fresno to 77977. We've tried to make it easy to give digitally so we can continue to help people in our community, in the Valley, and around the world.
Well, thanks so much again, church. We're getting ready right now to transition over to Pastor Andrew with an incredible message right now, and make sure you stick around for some great ways to get connected at the end.
Thank you for joining us again here at Bridge Church Online. I want to thank you first and foremost if you tuned in and you joined us for our Easter gathering that we did last week. I had a handful of emails come in and people said, Pastor, you looked like you were cold. It's because I was. It was really, really cold because I had to start preaching at 7:05 a.m. as the sun was coming up, and it was 42 degrees. And so if I looked cold, I really was cold. The other thing I want to dispel is I even had some family in Michigan that was watching the gathering online, and they were having a conversation during it, wondering if that was a green screen. It wasn't. It was actually on site up at Pine Flat Lake. And I just got to give credit to an incredible creative arts team that was up there an hour plus before I ever showed up to preach, to set up. But it was a beautiful setting. And I really do pray that you were blessed by our Easter experience online, because we debated about ways that we could switch it up and make it special. And that incredible sunrise morning up at Pine Flat, and God gave us one amazing day. We had one go at it. We had Friday. It was the only window of opportunity that we had for it, and everything worked. And so I pray that you were blessed, encouraged, and found hope once again in the resurrection by that. And so once again, I just want to say thank you for inviting us back into your homes again this Sunday for our online gathering. So sermon planning here at Bridge Church is done, if not 6 months, a year in advance. And so prior to all of this sheltering in and staying at home and not being able to meet here physically, I decided that I want us to move into a series right after Easter entitled Simply Jesus. I just realized that after we celebrate the resurrection, it's the single greatest event in human history, that I wanted us to delve into the person that it's all about. Yes, all of our teaching and everything about the Bible is predicated and about Jesus, but I wanted to specifically for a season set aside for us to follow and listen and lean into the very teachings of Jesus from the Gospels themselves. Well, none of us could have predicted how needed, more than any time ever, for us to get a proper understanding of who Jesus is. Because right now, I don't know if you're like me, like we're being confronted with maybe some perspectives that we had about Jesus or things that we need Jesus to be, and we're having to combat those and bring those into alignment with really who Jesus is. And so we're going to jump into this series entitled Simply Jesus. And so for the handful of weeks that follow, we're going to see what he said. We're going to see where he went. We're going to see the teachings and the things both he challenged and encourages us with. We're just going to get into a time of just simply Jesus. But this first message this morning, well, this is kind of an introductory, because for us to listen to what Jesus said, for us to follow what Jesus did, we've got to affirm who Jesus is. And for us, in order for us to be able to move forward in the series, we've got to ask and then answer the most fundamental question that was asked within all the Gospels. It was the turning point in all the Gospels. We're going to be in the book of Matthew this morning. And here's the question. The question is, who is Jesus? Who is he? And whether you follow him or you don't, you have an internal answer, whether you realize it or not. You've come to some sort of conclusion. You have some sort of framework by which you understand who Jesus is, or at least who you think he is. But it's the most pivotal question asked in all of the Gospels. It is the turning point when Jesus asks, who do people say the Son of Man is? And so before we jump into where we're going to be, I want to invite you, if you've got a Bible in front of you, or if you've got a device, would you go ahead and meet me in the New Testament book of Matthew? We're going to be in Matthew chapter 16 today, verses 13 through 16, just a little group of passages with a huge significance. And so Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 16. So as you're making your way there, let me kind of set the context for it. And so everything that precedes Matthew 16 is Jesus dealing with the religious leaders of the time. They're challenging him about who he is and the authority by which he teaches. Everything on the opposite end then, following the passage that we're looking at this morning, deals with the reality that once who Jesus is clarified, it goes contrary to what everybody thinks about Jesus by him saying, now I've got to go to Jerusalem. I've got to be handed over, tried, crucified, dead, buried, and on the third day I will rise again. And then followed by the single hardest teaching that Jesus asked his followers in regard to what we're willing to do. And he says, are you willing to take up your cross daily and follow me? And right in the middle of those two bookends, both of the religious leaders and a very tough teaching by Jesus, we find the first question that we're going to take a look at this morning, and it comes from Matthew chapter 16, verse 13. And we have Jesus walking along with the 12, his disciples, those who had been closest to him, and it reads this in verse 13. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, the highest northern part of Israel, where he had traveled with them, he asked his disciples, who do people say the Son of Man is? So they've been traveling with him for a long time, and Jesus basically stops in the middle of their travels to Caesarea Philippi, and he goes, hey, what's public opinion when it comes to me? What do you hear the chatter? What are people saying about me? But he doesn't just say, what do people say about me? See, Jesus is making this association to terminology that harkens all the way back to Daniel chapter 7. See, this imagery of the Son of Man was this vision that Daniel has of this divine being that follows and presents himself to the Ancient of Days, who is God, who is Yahweh, as Israel would have understood it. But in this vision that Daniel has in Daniel chapter 7, the Son of Man approaches the Ancient of Days, by which all power and authority and dominion are given to him by the Ancient of Days. He establishes a kingdom that will not be shaken. And Jesus in this moment is making this association for his disciples, that he is the image of the vision that Daniel had so many thousands of years ago, that it speaks about him. And so Jesus is asking them, what's public opinion? So what do you hear that people are saying? And basically, here's what he's asking the 12 in that scenario. What's the general perception of me from those who aren't really near me but know about me? And I would say it like this. We all have a general perception of people that we see at a distance all the time, whether that would be an athlete or whether that would be somebody that we see in film all the time. What's interesting is because we see them with such regularity, we begin to develop an opinion about them. We can almost feel like we know them, but we don't know them at all. We may have seen them in a TV show and then in a movie, and we may have seen them over the course and the period of many years. We may watch that athlete week in and week out on the field. Well, truth be told, we're not watching any athletes doing anything right now, but you may have watched them in whatever sporting events, not only for a season, but for years, and you begin to develop what you believe is a rapport with them and an opinion about them. But it's from a distance. Because if somebody asks them about you, they don't know you. There's been no relationship. And so it's an opinion, it's a perception based on distance in which we come to a conclusion about somebody. Now, make it more personal. I don't know about you, but there's been times when people have developed an opinion about me, but they don't really know me. They've developed it from a distance and what they've seen or what they've heard. But we've never sat down, we've never had a cup of coffee, we've never had a discussion about fears or apprehensions or hopes or dreams about the future. They don't know really what my kids do or however old they are. It's a perception. And that's what Jesus is doing in this moment. And the disciples tell him, well, the general perception about you is that either you're John the Baptist or you're Elijah who's come back, or maybe even Jeremiah. Here's what's interesting. The general perception is that Jesus is some sort of significant prophet. It is that he's in that robust category of the prophets that have preceded him, or maybe even the one who heralded his arrival like John the Baptist. But he's somebody of significance, and yet they just simply have a profile. And you know what? In our culture, in our day today, and even you have your own perception, but there's some general perceptions from a distance in which we have developed a profile of who Jesus is, or at least who we think he is. And I just want to share a few that I hear on the regular. We've got social justice Jesus, and he is all hybrid driving, free trade, about all that he does. He's about the fact that the rainforest is being deforested. He's about social issues. Now, hear me. All these are in hyperbole, and these are types. And so if that's you, we're just going to be challenging some views that we have about Jesus. It's all about taking care of social issues. Now, that comes from a long time ago. It was a part of something called liberation theology. Look, even Solomon says in the book of Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. As original as we think our thoughts are, they're just kind of rebaked versions of what have always been. And so liberation theology is this idea that Jesus' highest end is to take care of the social issues of our day. Is that the gospel? No. Is that part of the gospel of Jesus? Absolutely. And now maybe that's not your view of Jesus. Maybe you see him more as fair-skinned, Anglo, straight-haired Jesus. Now, we've all seen the picture, and I hope we can flash a picture of it up even during this message, but it's the one that I remember seeing in my great-grandmother's house, that he didn't look Middle Eastern and definitely not Jewish at all. He looked like an Anglo kid somewhere from Texas who had flat-ironed his hair, and he was kind of a hippie-esque type approach to Jesus. Love was his supreme attribute. But so much so that it eclipsed everything else in the justice aspect about him. See, this kind of like Anglo fair-skinned Jesus is the one who just kind of meandered through the wilderness of Israel as birds would light on his shoulder, and he would pick flowers and say little statements that would make people go, oh, wow, that's fair-skinned Jesus. Or maybe you got more of the nobody likes to be around this guy at the party Jesus, which is really just a remake of legalistic Jesus. Legalistic Jesus is that guy that you really don't want to have a conversation with, because at some point it's going to come to this hard line opinion and conviction that he has, and he's going to not agree with you until you agree with him. And nobody wants to hang out with this guy at the party. Jesus is the guy who everybody knows is more against anything than he is about anything. And you just want to kind of stay away from him, because his idea of excitement is putting peanut butter on the rice cake that he eats, because he's only dressed in earth tones, because anything else might be too provocative. And he's just so straight-laced, and he's just so uptight. He's all about right and wrong. Grace is a word he thinks is for the weak. He doesn't realize that he himself has not yet experienced it. It's rules and regulations, and nobody likes to be at the party with this guy. Jesus is all about kind of neutering men to just be safe and good. That's the highest end. And boy, does he have an opinion, and he'll tell you if you'll give him a second. And then there's probably the more understood version of Jesus that some of us may deal with the most, and I like to call it Play-Doh Jesus. Play-Doh Jesus, you can mold and fashion him into your likeness and your image. You can craft this Jesus to the degree in which you feel comfortable for whatever's going on in your life. You don't change to meet his standard and his lordship. You change him to meet your standard and your preference. And so if you got a conviction that it changes, then you're able to remold Jesus more into your likeness and your image. He follows your lead. You're not following his. And maybe you have some sort of rendition, but the reality is the same thing that Jesus was asking the disciples is we have to realize for ourselves is that we have opinions about Jesus from a distance, a perception. But Jesus doesn't leave it there. He takes the general perception, then turns to Peter, and he makes it personal. He says, yeah, I know there's this general perception that people think I am based on the Son of Man, but then he moves on into Matthew chapter 16, verses 14 and 15. He says this. They replied, well, some say John the Baptist and others Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And here it is, and this is where we need to listen. This is where it goes from the general to the personal. He says, but you, he asks them, who do you say that I am? And it's one of those moments to Peter, no, like don't look to the left or the right. He's looking at those who have been following him, and he's like, don't look at the opinion or the thoughts of the general perception. Don't even look to the person to your left or your right. Who do you say that I am? When we talk about those athletes, or we talk about an actor or an actress, we can have this perception of them. But then if somebody followed up and asked us the question, do you really know them? We would respond, well, that's just my perception. Like, I don't know them. I mean, that's just what I think about them. I have never really had the opportunity to spend any time with them. It's just my opinion based on what I've seen, not really anything personally that I know. And that's where it's so important to take it from the general to the personal. See, we've got to do personal work in being able to answer for ourselves who Jesus is. And sometimes I think that we have come to a conclusion based on the opinions of others and their perception from a distance, not realizing we haven't come to a personal conclusion based on knowing Jesus ourselves. That's the most important thing for us to understand as we move forward in following and understanding who Jesus is that at some point we have to come face to face with who we think and who we've come to understand Jesus to be. And Peter doesn't leave it up for suggestion or for speculation. See, he jumps right into clarifying for us. Look, he's not the guy you don't want to hang out at the party with Jesus. He's not fair-skinned Anglo Jesus. He's not social justice Jesus. He's not Plato Jesus. Here's what Peter says. Peter answered him, verse 16, "You are the Messiah, the Christ, the Son of the living God." What's the significance there? Peter, in one declaration, says, you're not just a good teacher. You're not just a good guy. You are the embodiment of which our people have longed and waited for, a great deliverer who will come and set things right. But let me just pause here. Even in that affirmation, Peter himself still had a wrong perspective of the complexity of who Jesus is. See, just a couple verses later, after his declaration of Jesus being the Messiah, Jesus goes, I've got to go to Jerusalem. I'm going to be crucified, dead, buried, and rise again on the third day. And Peter is like, no, that's never going to happen. And Jesus rebukes him. I mean, like a pretty hardcore rebuke, like calls him Satan and says, get behind me. I mean, I've been frustrated with some people, but I've never associated them to being Satan. It's because Peter's perspective still was not correctly grounded in who Jesus is. It's who he thought Jesus was going to be. And for Peter and lots of Israelites at that time, their coming Messiah was going to be not only their personal, but their national liberator. He was going to be the one that broke the chains of the people from Rome and gave them their national identity. Peter didn't realize that there were other chains that Jesus was going to break, and they were more spiritual than they were political. He was going to break chains that would bind us all to sin. He would usher us all into liberty, not as a new nationality, but a new identity in Christ Jesus. Sons and daughters being able to live the hope now with a hope of a future with him in the days ahead. See, what we realize in his declaration is that Jesus isn't just an inspirational teacher, which his teachings are inspirational. He's not just a cultural changer, even though he changed culture. He is the God-man, fully God, fully man. And therefore, when we realize who Jesus is, he's not just good, he's not just great, he is God. And therefore, establishing that, we've got to realize what he says to us is best for us. I know that as we read the Bible and we read the words of Jesus, they can very much challenge us, because many times we find ourselves out of alignment with what Jesus is preaching and teaching and demonstrating. But if he's God, and he is, and he created us, and he did, what he teaches for us is best for us. He's got our greatest end in mind. And many times we've got to reorient who we think about Jesus or who we believe we need Jesus to be with the reality of who he is, knowing that it might be tough, but it is best for us. That's why his disciples and those who believe in him are called followers. We're not just simply called believers. We're not just simply called likers. We're called followers. But we live in a day and age when following somebody is as easy as clicking a button, and we can periodically see what picture they post or what little inspirational saying they have, and we can take it or leave it. And I think that has really gone to discourage us from the way in which we are to approach Jesus. See, Jesus isn't putting out a daily inspirational quote that we should just think about possibly implementing in our lives. Jesus, and here's what we've got to realize, Jesus isn't spouting off good advice. Jesus is giving life. He's not in the self-help section of our bookstore or the self-help section of Amazon that we can order. No, he's not just giving us little things pragmatically to make our life better. He is speaking words of life for us to live. He is the one who created us. He is the one who has breathed life into us. He is the one who has promised and delivered his Spirit for us. Therefore, what he has is to give us life, not sometime in the future. See, the Messiah came, Jesus came, yes, promising that we would have eternity with him, but also that we would experience life in its abundance now. And that means that we're his followers. That means, actually, a translation of that means that our lives are to imitate the life of Jesus. Now, here's what's tricky about that. Left outside of believing in Jesus and being filled by the Spirit of God, it is impossible for us to imitate perfection. We lack the internal ability to do that. However, Jesus says, I'm going to send you a helper, the Holy Spirit. And so if we ever think that it's up to us to kind of bootstrap theology and make ourselves be able to grin and bear it and be the people that Jesus needs us to be, we're always going to fail. I know that was wildly encouraging to hear. But what's great is he says, I'm going to give you my Spirit. I'm going to give you my Holy Spirit. And he's going to manifest fruit and life in you to allow your life to fall more into alignment with mine, so that as we look at his word and we are challenged, we are able to say, Lord, I can't do this. Like I can't change myself to that capacity. I lack the ability. And you know what? That's absolutely right. And that's absolutely where we need to be as we posture ourselves for Jesus to continue to transform us to be his followers. And following isn't just about clicking. Following isn't just about scrolling. Following is to take steps after the direction in which Jesus goes. The best way that I can illustrate this is, as kids, we all played some rendition of Follow the Leader. And it was a really simple game. If you were the leader, whatever you did, those behind you followed you. If you were behind the leader, wherever they did, whatever they did, or wherever they went and whatever they did, you did the same thing and you went to the same place. And basically, that's what it means for us to follow Jesus. It's not to see his directions for our life and the words he speaks into our life as an option of consideration. This isn't fortune cookie pragmatism. This is life-giving word. Therefore, he says, I know you haven't been this way, but follow me, and I'm going to give you life. I'm not just going to give you good advice. I'm not just a good guy. I'm not just an average teacher. I am the God-man, because he couldn't be God and then say he was just a good teacher. If he was just a good teacher and he failed to rise from the dead, that he's not actually God. But he is God, and therefore what he has to say is what's best for us. And in following him, I want to take us just quickly to John chapter 10, verse 10. And it says this: a thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come so that you may have life and have it to abundance. When we think abundance, especially in North America, we think of abundance materialistically. We think of things. We think of more. I mean, you look at the places that we used to go and eat, and we don't do that anymore right now, but the places that we go, and more is better. Abundance comes in quantity. What Jesus is saying is, I have come to give you the life in which you were truly meant to live. Sin corrupted that in your fallenness, but I have come to breathe new life into you so that you can live the fullness of the life in which I created you to live. The abundant life. An abundant life filled by the Spirit of God. An abundant life following the steps and the words and the teaching of Jesus. An abundant life of living by faith regardless of what we see. Abundant life of turning over our most precious things in our lives to God. Our marriages, our children, our occupations, our career trajectory. Turning them over to the one who loves us and has a better and perfect plan for us. That's why right now, it's more important than ever for us to delve into a time and a season of just simply Jesus. And maybe this is the season in which you are having to reevaluate who you think Jesus is. And that's fine. Guess what? Lots of preachers and lots of pastors and lots of people in churches are doing the same thing. Because we look at what's going on and we go, but it's not supposed to be this way. And we have to ask ourselves, but why do I think that? Because Jesus tells us, in this world you will have trouble, but take courage. I've overcome this world. And so maybe he's challenging you in a way that you realize, wow, I've put a lot of my faith and a lot of my hope more in the things that I can control and do and that are certain, as opposed to the one who holds all things together. Maybe you realize that your rendition of Jesus is more Play-Doh than it should be, that you craft him more into your image and the things that you want to do and what you would prefer him to look like, as opposed to allowing him to mold you more into who he is. See, as we prepare to continue on in this journey of simply Jesus, I want us to listen to the words of what Jesus has to say. Allow us to be reacquainted with him. You may have been following Jesus for 30 years. I pray that right now that you would ask the Holy Spirit, what aspect or rendition of Jesus have I made that's not really who he is? Or you may be watching and say that I've never placed my faith and trust in Jesus because I've just seen him as just this good guy, or maybe he was just this social justice guy, as opposed to him truly and fully being God. Let's allow Jesus himself and his living word for us to define him to us. Let's allow Jesus to be Jesus.
Okay, hold on. Don't go anywhere just yet. We have a few more things we want to talk to you about. Some ways that you can get connected. In the description of this video, you'll see several links on there that we want you to check out.
So, if it's your first time joining us, or you're new here, we want to say thanks for coming to our gathering and encourage you to go online and fill out our Connect card. It's actually the first link in the description.
The other links on there go to our prayer wall, our needs page, and even some coronavirus updates. So make sure today before you go, you check those out. All right, hey, we had a great time today. Thanks for joining us.
We love you, church. Until next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Are we done yet?
I hope so.
And cut.
Okay, we made it. Whew.